Hi, everyone. I'm Gwen Callahan. I'm the co-director of Portland Horror Film Festival. And today I am joined by, I think, 85% of the filmmakers from Shorts Block 5. And I'm so excited to talk with you all. Thank you all for joining us to talk a little bit about your films. I'm just going to jump right in. Michael Verratti, your film Infested Hearts is this beautiful black and white exploration of isolation and kind of fear and paranoia. Something I think we've all experienced a little bit of to one degree or another during the pandemic and lockdown. Tell us a little bit about the story of this film.
Well, the film was shot during the pandemic. When you see it, you'll note that there is a lot of post-production work because the infestation of the movie is a lot of bugs, and both of my actors were very happy about getting a role during a time where roles were few, but they did not want me to put live insects on them. So we had to shoot and then spend many, many months afterwards creating the world. But the short came out of just that idea of being isolated in a place with one other person and having that realization that what if the person you're stuck with is not ideal? And what happens when a relationship falls apart or dies in a circumstance like that?
It's yeah, I mean there's that is it in a nutshell. And there's so many layers to it too. It seems like there's a layer of just the circumstance, and then there's also this layer of underneath, like what's inside each of us, and do we ever truly get to know the other person?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm very interested in this place where horror meets the truth, because I think that horror is a truly great genre because we can use that dark lens of the fantastic to discuss things that otherwise maybe are too uncomfortable to face head on. You can create a monster to represent something. But the truth is, all monsters, as cliche as it is to say, all the horrors that we put into scary stories are representative of some aspect of humanity. And for this particular story, the idea that the infestation begins within, the eventual dissolution begins within, it's me kind of speaking to the fact that we make our monsters, whether externally or internally.
Hmm. Interesting. I do love the shot at the end of the film where he comes back and he's looking at him and he sees the bug legs or spider legs or something horrible coming out of his back. Was that also a CG effect, or was there
It
some?
was, but that was also the first image that I had in my mind when I sat down to write this. It was going to be something completely different, and then I had this idea of a man coming through the doorway with those disjointed bug legs just kind of popping out of his body, and I thought, well, what's the story of that? And it sort of reverse engineered itself, and I think that I even surprised myself because I thought that I was going to sit down and write a traditional creature feature, and instead it became this sort of, oh, maybe I have some shit I have to deal with.
Very nice. And we noticed that William Lott is one of your actors.
Yes.
And he also has a film playing on Sunday called Bottom. Do you guys work together often? Do you collaborate?
William is someone that I have met here in Los Angeles. The community of queer horror creators is small, which is not surprising. It's a niche market anywhere, no matter where you're at. And I met William after I had done another short film, and we just realized that we have a lot of things in common. A lot of our tastes are in common, our interests are in common. And when I was putting this particular piece together, I had not yet worked with him. And I reached out and said, hey, I know you're often doing your thing, but do you want to come and like play on my thing for a bit? And it was great. And in fact, I just reached out to him the other day because I'm putting together a feature and I believe he's going to be involved in that as well. So.
Hmm. Very nice. Excellent. I can't wait to hear more about that. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to jump over to Jen Wolf. Hi, Jen. And Jen Wolf's film is called You Will See Us. And if I'm not mistaken, you filmed that here in Portland?
Yeah, we filmed it during the pandemic. It was definitely one of those things that was like, we there's nothing to do. Can we like just get like get our small bubble of people together and make a short film? It was something that I had written a full feature for, but I wanted to film a proof of concept, and then my husband, who plays the villain in the film, kind of just kept pushing me to like make it longer and longer, and then it became a like eventually became a full like 14-minute short. Um, and so everybody who worked on the film, it was like almost no actors. They it was definitely risky because it was their first time. So but also my cinematographer was this was her first time working on anything cinematic, and so it's just first timers all around, and we're really proud of what we came up with. So
Well, I think that I would never have known that that your actors had never acted before if you had not just. So well done all around, everybody. Good job.
yeah.
The core of the story is this sort of men's rights uprising, and we are treated to the audio of a podcast where the podcast host is sort of exhorting men to kind of take back their place in the world and like show women what their place is and to take back what's yours, and it's terrifying. But I'm curious, because there's so many of these things, where did this antler stag imagery come from?
I mean, I created kind of the stag idea, but by basing it on incels and kind of like these guys who they're perpetually alone. And so I just my husband, who's a graphic designer, but he's also in the film, came up with the symbol. We liked making it a little bit asymmetrical, so it just kind of was like a little bit more jarring. It had started off more symmetrical and evolved a little bit, and it made sense. We wanted to separate these men who are like roving through the city in some way that was not over the top. Like we thought about kind of like an armband or something like Nazi-esque, but in the end it just seemed more culty to do a symbol on the forehead. So and also just creepier.
Yeah, and I have to say your husband's performance is creepy as fuck. Like he is chilling because he seems like a really nice guy, and he seems like 100 guys that you've met before, and then there's this undercurrent of something there that's very sinister and feels very dangerous. And the actress who played Ever was great at kind of trying to of putting on screen that trying to like, I don't want to broadcast that I'm freaked out by this guy, but I'm freaked out by this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's that so the story behind the entire like the feature that I wrote and then the short is that my main actress who plays Ever, her name's Brittany Connolly. This was based on something that happened to her when she was driving for Lyft. She picked up somebody. It was the end of the night, and you don't know where you're taking people until they're in your car. And so she ended up having to take this guy from Portland to Hood River. And when they were in the Columbia River Gorge, where there's nowhere to pull over and cell phone service was very spotty, the guy started acting really crazy and menacing and terrifying her, to the point that she was like, I might have to crash my car to keep this guy from killing me. And he wanted to go to this middle of nowhere location that wasn't even really a house. So she told me the story the first time I met her, and I immediately asked if I could write a feature about it. So it was maybe a little therapeutic for her to go through the experience of playing herself in that situation.
And I do also enjoy the end where, instead of just being like, oh, okay, she kind of is just like, fuck this.
Yeah, I wanted her to take the power back. And, I wanted the ending to be both hopeless and powerful, and to, use the Easter egg ending as a way to give you kind of a duality of feeling. Because that's where we're at. Like we want to stay hopeful, but things are dark, things are really bleak, but there are still these moments when you can just fight against the kind of oppression that women are re-experiencing all over again. So yeah, so it felt like an important moment to put into the film.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for making this, and it's great. Like, the actors were really great. The story was freaky. Like, and sadly, I'm not that surprised that it's based on something that actually happened.
Yeah. It's the scariest things.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Truth being stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
I'm gonna head over to Jason Zink, and your film Tapehead is a delightful sort of a documentary crew follows around this guy who collects things on VHS, and he is just blissfully unaware of any sort of danger in his world. When he went down into the basement, and you see like the axe and the chainsaw hanging up, and I think even the music and the lighting are sort of like you're expecting something is going to happen, but then he's like, "Oh, here they are!" And he just grabs his VHS tapes and goes about his merry way. I can only assume that you are you also a VHS collector?
Yeah, I'm a VHS nerd for sure.
And how did you translate that into this film of a man who's obsessed with VHS and then becomes killed by the very thing he loves?
Yeah, so well, he's not dead.
Okay.
Spoiler, we're gonna do a second one because we had so much fun. Okay. But we made a feature film called Straight Edge Kegger, and we spent 2 years touring the world with that, and we got it on Shudder and stuff, but it was a very stressful experience. And so during the pandemic, we were trying to come up with something that would just be purely for fun. And I realized that I had gone down the rabbit hole of collecting myself. So I was like, what do we have access to? What would just be joyful to shoot? And we came up with this short. So yeah, it was just a lot of fun. And we were just making fun of ourselves because I am the nerd in the short for sure.
Okay. I also enjoyed your end credits, kind of like in the VHS labels and things like that. That family video, how is that? Just an empty building, or what's the deal with the family
just
video?
Just an empty building. We were actually going to shoot at this mall. There's this weird little video store that's still surviving in there, just barely. And so we went there and we shot in there, and right down the road was a closed family video. So we're like, oh, let's go shoot there. And it's funny too, because I have 4 video store shelves from Family Video that are in my basement. I have like the director's chair from Family Video, but none of that made it in. So maybe in the next short, we'll plug some of that in.
Very nice. Who's the actor that you cast as
Wilson Mack. So he was supposed to improv a name, and instead he used his own name. So it just stuck because everything else was so good. So I'm like, well, now you're this guy. So yeah, he does get some stuff online with people messaging him like, are you really this person? Like, what is this? Yeah. So.
That's really fun. Is he also going to be in your feature?
I think so. The next feature is going to be totally different than anything I've ever done. So we'll see. We're just right now we just finished the script. We got a pitch deck and taking meetings, that kind of stuff. So we'll see. I would love to use them again for sure.
Well, we look forward to finding out.
I'm
gonna head over to Bronson Allen for your film In the Dark, which is the world premiere. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is such a fun short film. It's very scary. There's a very scary monster in it, and the setup is almost comedic. So I was delighted to see how the ending didn't just kind of turn out to be a funny ending, but like kind of went for it and did the thing that it said it was going to do. But we, as horror fans, have seen a lot of movies, expect that there's going to be some kind of left turn in there. Where did this idea come from? Is it something, were you scared of the dark as a kid? Was there a monster under your bed?
No, not really. It kind of just started as to me, it was a darkly funny premise, the idea of someone who was super optimistic and always believed in the best in people, and had been on dates with weird people, which we can all relate to, and finally had found a guy who actually fit the bill of someone who was seemingly quote unquote normal, handsome, funny, has a nice place, good job. And then she gets there, she meets him, he's all the things she wants, and then it turns out he's afraid of the dark. And because there's a monster that comes out when he's in the dark, and then she makes the mistake of disbelieving him because most of the guys she's ever dated have been total weirdos, and that ends up turning on her. So to me, it was initially just a funny, darkly comedic premise, but then I thought, how can we actually make this meaty and talk about kind of the vulnerability that we all share when we're meeting someone for the first time, and what we want to let out and what we don't want to let out. And I just love this. I'm fairly agnostic when it comes to like believing in actual supernatural or religious things, but I do love the idea that there is a world where all these things are possible. So that Bigfoot actually roams in the woods, that chupacabras are amongst us. So the idea that she doesn't believe it, and that ends up being her downfall because these things actually do exist, I think is an interesting way to imagine the world. So, but yes, I was not scared of the dark. Let's just be clear.
So different direction. Because as a kid, there was a fairly large space under my bed, and in the middle of the night when I would have to go to the bathroom, I would actually exit my bed from the end. I would climb over the brass bed frame onto the trunk and then jump out the door into the hallway. So as to avoid putting my feet on the floor next to the bed. So this really spoke to me.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Oh my goodness. And then your actors were great. I really loved your lead actress and just how like she's us kind of from her point of view. And,
she did such a good job of playing just a very sincere, sweet, open person, and she really wants to like him. And when he tells her the secret, she feels for him, and she feels bad, but she just can't let herself be with another weirdo, and that's normal. And so her downfall isn't her own fault; it's her being totally human and making the choice that's for herself. But this is a horror movie, and horrible things happen to good people. So that's either scary or terrifying or funny, depending on your perception. I find it both.
Thank you. Raphael de Leon, your film Caregiver is a very nice, tightly crafted piece. Can you tell us a little bit about how this film came about and the story of it?
Sure. So last fall, I was in business school, and one of the classes I was taking for the final project for the class, we had to do sort of like a video assignment that was like journalistic in nature. And at that point, I wasn't planning on shooting another short film for like a while because I was busy with school and work. So for the final project of the class, I thought to myself, what if I could use this as an opportunity and an excuse to do another horror short? So luckily, I quickly came up with the idea, ran it by my professor, and he was cool with it. So, and the idea itself was, it just came from as you get older and as your parents get older, and me as someone who lost one parent a couple of years ago, it's for me, I get into this thing, well, how can I help, my my remaining parent, extend her lifetime as much as possible. And although, there's always time that, that in the end, it gets us all, but, you always make that effort as to, whether it's something like, trying to help their health habits or something like that. So the idea of caregiver with which, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, is about a graduate student who interviews a young volunteer caregiver for his project. But things go wrong. That whole idea of caring for a loved one and trying to extend their lifetime as much as possible. But in the world of the film, that sometimes might involve doing bad things. So that's where that came about. And luckily, because I was, you know, having it serve double duty as a short outside of my class, but also the assignment for the class, everything had to be done as fast as possible within like a couple weeks worth of time. It was like the shortest pre-production period I've ever had. But luckily, you know, I was fortunate that it all came out. It came together in the end. So
it's a really interesting piece because so often in horror, there's the core story and then there's the overlay of horror that's kind of a stand-in for multiple things. And the relative that's being given care, the caregivee, I guess, turns out to be a zombie. Like, it's okay, we can talk about it. People should have already watched all these films before they watched the Q&A. Is interesting because it's like, I think if you've ever had a relative that is going through dementia or Alzheimer's or has some kind of terminal illness, it would be interesting to me to know like what people associate with that image of the zombie. Like if it's like, my mind immediately went to like some kind of disease that makes them not themselves anymore, like dementia or Alzheimer's, where they're kind of sometimes unrecognizable as the person that you knew, but it has now turned into like literally this mindless zombie that has to be fed and cared for, and it's rough because you have to do it. But is there a specific thing you had in mind with that, or
well, I guess in terms of a specific cases, it was mostly inspired by as I was growing up, seeing my mom take care of her mother as you know, in her old age, and before, you know, my grandmother passed, you know, she had developed Alzheimer's. So there were several years where I grew up watching her actually being taken care of by a caregiver who would come in every day and sort of spend the day with her and do all those things. And it wasn't just one caregiver. There, like over the years, there were several that would, you know, kind of cycle in and out. But so yeah, just observing all of that, and so that was kind of the main inspiration from personal experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump down to Ian Kammer. Your film Safe and Sound is such a great it's such a great sound design.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, well, the idea came from the location that we actually shot at. It's my girlfriend's family's house, and they have that exact same kind of alarm system. I guess it doesn't speak like we do in the film, but it beeps whenever a door or window is opened. So we were watching like a movie super late at night, and it must have been like 1 a.m. or midnight or something, and we heard it go off, and for a second we were like, oh, could that be, oh no, it's probably the mom like opening a window or something. But there's still that question of like, you know, it could have been anything opening and we wouldn't have known. So that was kind of the spark that that started like crafting that story and kind of creating something, I guess, kind of mundane or kind of safe or something like that, and then turning it and kind of twisting it and turning it into something that's I don't know, a lot more sinister, I guess. I think the best horror films kind of take something simple and then turn it into something kind of terrifying, kind of like how Jaws makes people scared of swimming in the ocean and that kind of thing.
Well, it's like when the character in the movie is trying to be quiet in the closet and their phone rings because somebody
Exactly. Yeah.
like, no, not right now, and it just kind of ratchets up the stress on that character and ratchets up the tension. That was really. I've actually had a friend who had that kind of alarm system where it says, back door open, and it's
definitely
out of nowhere, just this voice out of nowhere. And instead of being like, I'm here to help you, it's like, you're stressing me out.
Definitely, yeah. And then that was the thing why we kind of added a voice to it, because originally the way that I wrote it, it was just beeping, and we made the decision to add a voice to it just so it could kind of become its own character, its own thing. Something for the actors to kind of play against, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely effective. And then you have some visual stuff going on in the background of the pool scene where she's outside and you see a monster run by.
Yeah.
What is your concept for these monsters? And I mean, we catch a glimpse of them, but is there a larger story behind them?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Originally, we wrote it as aliens coming from far away and invading, and we got some honest feedback about it, about like we've kind of seen that so many times before, and it just wasn't working for a lot of people. So we kind of made the decision to kind of have them come from underground from far away. And even though we made it before, we wrote it and shot it in 2019, and then I did posts throughout 2020 during the pandemic. And so it kind of created this, like, I don't know, I think the pandemic and the political divide that we went through and through 2020 and the previous few years, it's like, we're not really afraid of someone far away coming to attack us. We're kind of more worried about what's coming out of our own backyard. So that kind of inspired like the monsters coming from underground and being kind of humanoid, being kind of bat-like, something. I think the Descent was like a big inspiration for that. So
okay, yeah, it's really effective. I loved that, like, the calls coming from inside the house. The monsters are coming from inside the house.
Yeah,
very nice. Well, thank you so much.
Of course, yeah.
Elisa, you were right. Elisa, Posted No Hunting is such a great little film, done entirely with stop motion and miniatures. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it's sort of an X-Files-esque surveillance cam, trail cam view of a deer, and then a monster comes out. So how did you decide to make this little film?
It's a pandemic project. I'm a stop motion animator and puppet maker, so that's the kind of films I make. And I was kind of really pressured to make a pandemic film. And I had started a few, but they were kind of like too big. Like the ideas were too big. The sets were literally too big to fit in my apartment in New York City. So I said, I gotta make a small film. I'm like, what is the smallest film? And I really want to make a horror film. Like pandemic just threw me straight into horror. I'm like, I'm doing horror now. And I said I could do something with a locked off camera, and there's no reason you can't make a found footage film that's animated. So I came up with this little idea, and my friend who I wrote it with, it kind of came out of a conversation we had, and we wrote the script in 10 minutes, like on the spot, and we were like, we're making this. And it took 4 months to make in total, which is pretty good for a 2-minute animated film. That's actually great. So yeah, made it last year.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And like just a little bit of humor in there too, with the kind of at the end, the agent being like, oh, there's nothing here, and then walks off, and then in comes the thing, like, what's going on?
I don't have the monster puppet, because to do the final shot, It was kind of an oversight on my part because it's the monster's wearing her clothes because it's like a reveal that is like humorous. It wasn't my intention, but every time I am in a room with that film, people laugh at that part and I'm fine with it. Not my intention. I'm glad that the reveal has a level of humor because you think it's her and she turns around and it's the monster. To get the monster in her clothes, I had to cut the monster's like body apart. So he doesn't look very good right now.
Oh my gosh.
So I put her back in her coat, but yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so for people who aren't familiar with how stop motion animation works, can you give like a really quick rundown of the process that you have to go through to get 1 second of footage?
Yeah, I mean, so I make puppets. So he's got a wire armature inside, so totally posable. This guy's covered in wool and got reflective eyes, so he looks creepy in the night vision camera. And basically, I just have to, and also there's holes in the feet, so you can literally tie it down to the set because they don't. That's the only way you can get the puppets to stand. They're literally tied down. You don't want anything to move. That's why it's stop motion. So put them down, time to the set. You move them a little bit, take a frame, a little bit more, take a frame. So I shoot the whole thing with the digital SLR camera, 1 frame at a time, 12 frames a second, and then you make a film. And it only took about 2 weeks to animate. Of the 4 months of production, the majority was making the 3 puppets in the set. That took way longer. 2 weeks to animate was pretty good, but it's not 2 minutes of animation because there's a lot of dead time in there. I was really, I felt pretty good about how much I got away with not animating. Of the 2 minutes, it's only like maybe 45 seconds of animation.
Okay. Well, there's some pauses and then there's like the video lines and things like that. So I feel like you made great use of the medium, and that was such a brilliant idea. And it's sort of imagination invoking because when we I don't know if you guys saw, we posted spotlights for everyone's films on our Facebook and Instagram to get people excited about the films. And someone was like, oh my gosh, no, like a trail cam horror. And they were very excited about it. So
yeah, there aren't a lot of those. I tried to do research and I couldn't find a lot of trail cam horror. I think because it's hard to make the animals act. That's why you got to make them yourself.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's perfect.
So another reason to do animation. This would have been really hard to do live action because the deer had to do some very specific acting. It's very hard to do with real deer.
And they don't fit in your apartment, so.
No, they would not fit in my apartment. That was still about 4 feet wide, so it's still pretty good size.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. David Roncon, I'm gonna hop over to you. Your film Stuck is one of the creepier films of the year, and also one that kind of is in a group of films that we like to call trunk horror or chest horror. We have about 4 or 5 films this year that deal with some kind of box or trunk that's closed and then is opened with ill results. And your film involves an attic and a girl kind of moving into a house and going through the attic and finding this trunk and then opening it. We noticed that there were some sigils on the side of the trunk. Can you talk about those a little bit for those of us who may not be super familiar with arcane symbology?
Yeah, one of the fun part of this project for me was to study the seal around the Book of Solomon, because I try to understand what kind of demon could match up with our characters, because they are maybe the same thing. Because Sophia, she is a fearful and shy girl, while the demon reflects her dark side. So I read this book and I collected all the seal around, and then I take them and put into this trunk and on the lock, because you have the secret seal of Solomon that we try to stuck the demon inside this trunk. And everything you see on this trunk was to to show its power, strength, and what gap means.
Nice. I mean, it made for very creepy, like if I found a trunk like that, I don't think I would open it. So, and it's fun because it tells us about a little bit about the character too, right off the bat, that they're like not paying attention or don't know what it means. And so they just open the trunk. And then for you, like this idea of a trunk with like a extra liminal space in it. How does
the idea of for me, I have always saw this kind of track more like the Pandora's box, because everything inside brings chaos, death, violence. But but for me, it was very important that create a sort of similarity between these trunk and and a drawer where we put our dreams, fear, obsession. Because Sophia, she's very shy and she keeps everything inside her. And for me, this was the fun part, because what pushed me to write this story was one question: what could happen if everything we want, everything we desire could, take an unexpected turn? And, then I had this trunk and then I, write this chapter. But for me, it was interesting to talk about the pandemic, the pandemic time we are living, because Sophia, she is very scared. She doesn't know what she wants, and I try to talk with her, and I asked her just one thing: to bring all that fears of there is no tomorrow into this short, because I live in. Because working and making something during the pandemic was a very was a nightmare. And I asked and I asked this to Yanwa, who is the actress.
Nice. Well, it was effective, very effective. In the text conversation that she has with her friend, I noticed that the text was in English. Is there different versions for different languages?
No, it's the only version of the short movie, because I have always, create this short movie in America, and I want, and that's why I take this choice. But at the same time, we have these silent characters because it could. Reflect that she has no power in this relationship, and she has not the power to take the choice, and so I had this was the first scene I wrote, because I loved the idea of these characters in the darkness with this sort of lightning, and she just text, and through this texting we could understand her background and how she feels.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for that. Yeah, the film, if the other filmmakers haven't seen it yet, it's extremely atmospheric and creepy, and it just kind of plays on all of the spooky attic tropes, and giving us sort of extra space. So. I'm gonna now, Funing Tang.
Hey.
Thank you for being with us. Are you in China right now?
Yeah, I'm in Beijing right now. It's 7 o'clock, almost 7 o'clock in the morning. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for bringing us Ordinary Family. And you just had your world premiere with us.
Yes.
And this remarkable film. We don't often get zombie movies from China, and we were really excited to see this, and we were really excited to see how interesting of a take on a zombie film it was. so you gave an introduction. We had you give a little introduction for our streaming audience that we played right before your film played, and talk a little bit about kind of the family dynamic in China and some of the like generational trauma that comes along with the traditional family pack there. Can you talk a little bit about the zombie virus outbreak in your film and how it kind of affects the character of the son?
Okay, so I got the inspiration from the COVID pandemic too. During COVID, because of city lockdowns and travel restrictions in China, families kind of, you got more family time than ever. It's good, of course, it's good. But also, what I'm interested in is the dark side of family time. So what I'm always interested in the dark side. The dark side is when you stay with your family, when you stay at home for more than you wanted or you intended to, many problems just come back. Your childhood trauma, all these pent-up emotions and concealed conflicts will erupt. So I feel the real zombie in the house maybe is not really the COVID virus. It's definitely, I'm not implying that the COVID patients are zombies. I think the real zombie is the family problem, the family issues you can never solve. That's the real zombie in the house, because you never solve it, you cannot kill it, because all these family issues live within your beloved one. And that's why the paradox lies. You cannot, they're dangerous, the zombies are dangerous, but you cannot kill them because you don't want to lose your beloved one. So when that happens, my protagonist is in the middle of, he's almost 30 years old. There's a lot of young people in China between 25 and 30 years old. They try to be independent. They try to move out. It's like my protagonist. But because of a lot of reasons, prevent them from doing that, like low income, expensive housing, or like my protagonist has encountered, there's a family member constantly needing him to be around, like his mother. So then he cannot go out and he's locked in, all of his family members locked in within this small space. So he has kind of to face the childhood trauma head on and deal with his parents. And my zombies is a little bit different from the classical zombies, because the classical zombies, they're just, biting people, biting around. But my zombies, they're more like humans. If you give what they really want, they have these fixations and addictions when they were humans. So if you give what they want, and then they're appeased, stop biting around. I think that's an interesting trait for my zombies, which make my movie kind of different from other zombie movies too. So when my protagonist's parents become that kind of zombie, because the father is a drunkard, is an alcoholic, so he needs alcohol all the time. That's like it's like when he was humans, but even more extreme. And his mother is addicted to him because his mother is a control freak, always want him to be around. So when his mother becomes a zombie, he just has to cling to him all the time. So you see, when the zombie outbreak happens, all this childhood stuff, all this childhood trauma he want to escape from, just all come back in an extreme format. So so he has to deal with it. But eventually, when he really succeeds in escaping into the street, when he sees, the soldiers killing all the zombies, he finally realized, okay, I cannot really solve the problem by killing my parents. So that's the paradox shows. And then eventually he chose to go home. That's an open ending, actually. Some people think it's quite warm because eventually he realized, okay, there's still love in me from my family. But some people think it's a very cold ending, because how can you live with your zombie parents, forever? So I think it depends on what kind of person you are when you look at the ending. So that's it.
I was going to say there's an interesting paradox between him wanting his independence and him also wanting his family to be okay, but then him also enabling their behavior and now he has to give his father the alcohol so that he doesn't bite anybody.
Right.
And he has to be there so that his mother doesn't bite anyone. And the only way to keep the peace is for him to just enable everybody. And for me, that's a bit of
well, it's quite funny. So I think it's both sad and funny. That's what I want to explore in my movie when it's come to, you know, the modern Chinese family, about the love and hate relationship between the young generation and the elder generation, between parents and children. So I think the China is still like a very family-centered culture right now, but definitely the old family value is, the old, you know, kind of household hierarchy is collapsing. And the elder generations sometimes use like filial piety, this kind of old value, as a way to control the younger generation. Mm-hmm. So it's a twisted love I observe in Chinese society. That's what I want to really explore in my film. As a, you know, use zombie as a metaphor for family problems and family issues. So
it's a wonderful film, and I think you absolutely succeed in doing something different and new with the zombie movie, which is what attracted us to it. We're always looking for fresh takes on, you know, the tried and true tropes of horror. So thank you, and congratulations on your world.
Thanks.
So before we wrap up, I'm gonna go back to the beginning and have everyone share, where can we find you on social media or the internet if we want to know more about your film or more about your next coming projects? Michael Varrati, go ahead.
I'm all over the place. The best place to find me is just on Twitter. It's my name, @Michael Varrati, same on Instagram. Also, weekly, I co-host a show called Midnight Mass. Yes, we had the title first with my friend Peaches Christ. And every week we talk about cult cinema. So we're out there talking about horror and crazy midnight stuff all the time. That's the best way to keep up with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen Wolfe, where can we find you?
I avoid everything but Instagram, so probably there. I'm J Wolf Author on Instagram, and you know, I post anything good that's happening, I'll post it there. But my books are also available on just Amazon and all the book places. So Jennifer Wolfe or Jennifer Bosworth are where you can find my books, or the odd names you can find them under. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I'm not on Facebook, you know? So it's not the best way to find me, but Instagram will answer it.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Jason Fink, where do we find you?
Jason Zink.
Jason Zink.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It happens all the time. But you can find me on Facebook under Jason Zink, but then Weird on Top Pictures. We have Instagram and Facebook, and our website, weirdontoppictures.com. And Michael, I'm gonna pester you because I love Peaches Christ, and I love her movie All About Evil. So yeah, I'm gonna bother you.
which just played at the Hollywood Theater.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Bronson Allen, where do we find you? Oh, you're muted. Bronson, you're still muted.
Oh, just learning technology now. I'm on Instagram, Bronson_Allen, and then my website, bronsonallen.com. You can see some of my other work there, and that's the extent of my online presence.
Thank you. Raphael, how about you? Where do we find you online?
So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Raphael DeLeon Jr. And also my website is raphaeldeleon.com. I have some of my previous shorts on there.
Thank you. Ian Kammer, where do we find you?
Probably best to find me on Instagram, IAM Kammer. So like Ian Kammer, but M instead of the N.
Elisa Stern, how do we find you online?
My website is elisastern.com, and all my social links are there. Active on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram is Dr. Puppet, Twitter's The Dr. Puppet. Annoying. Posting a lot of behind the scenes on a new stop motion short, another horror short I'm working on now. So lots of good stuff.
David, where do we find you online?
Find me on Facebook and Instagram, but I prefer Instagram. And you have to write David Roncone.
David Veronica on Instagram. Okay, thank you. Funing, where do we find you on?
I'm not a social media person actually, but I do just set up my Twitter account. So you guys can find me on Twitter account, Funing Town. And I think I'm on Facebook. But I lost the password and stuff. So I'll just try to find that back. So Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, thank you. And throughout the festival, you guys can be on hop on the Discord server and chat with the audience and chat with each other. And for the audience, the link is just below the screen there to join the Discord server. And yeah, have fun talking to each other. And like, thank you so much for taking the time out to come talk to me today. I really enjoyed meeting all of you, even if it was only virtually for now. Hope to see you all one day soon in person. Would love to have you like come be at the Hollywood Theater with us someday. And when you have your next horror film, please send it our way so we can take a look at it and maybe play it in our next festival. So that's it. Thank you all for those of you watching. The festival continues streaming through Wednesday, July 6th. And there's still time for you to catch up on anything that you missed over at portlandhorror.eventive.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.